Good morning. I'm just going to give people time to come on. Oops, maybe not. Well, I think I'll start because this video is is going to be posted in a course I'm doing. So I want to get the conversation done, even if I'm talking to myself, which is which is fine. Um, One of the things that I think we keep getting sort of slammed by, sort of startled by, and if we ever wanted to think that there was a time where it's very clear that life as we have known it is not the life we know now. So, regardless of your description of evolution, the there's no way this isn't something is evolving, yay or nay, but something is evolving. And and that evolving has certain effects, has certain challenges to our systems. So one of the things that was fascinating to me when I was really in kind of the deepest part of the effect that a virus was having on my body was I could feel an intelligence that had introduced itself into the human system that didn't operate like any other intelligence we'd ever known. We now know it operates more like a common cold than like a flu. There's a lot we've discovered about it. But what I was very clear about in the, um, what's the word I want to say? What I was very clear about was that my system needed to evolve to include. And that really is the core of evolution. Is is uh, is the need to evolve. So the so I want to just simply speak speak to it in a manner that is um, informative, whether you are experience yourself as informed or not. Um, I leave to you. So I just began a body of work called Restoring GOD Matrices, which has to do with restoring, generating, organizing, or operational, both words will do fine, operational and organizing designs of creation. In other words, the way we once existed. So when I say that this event that these people are in is a 7-month event of self-study, it it can't help but go over their head because self-study has been, two words, have been relegated to academia. But self-study is the study of self. And you cannot study self directly because the only thing you meet is your present existing identity. And you know that self lives beyond your present identification of yourself because you seek to be yourself. So let's just lay that to the side of the table for a moment and let me now address that this video is dedicated to self-study, the study of self, and the study of self as an evolving process that seeks to include more, be part of more, have more, be more, do more. Not in the sense of busyness, but in the sense of more being able to express oneself in a manner where one feels that one is fully expressed. And that full self-expression is this sense of fulfillment. It's this sense of oneness with one's self. It is not descriptive. It is experiential. It cannot live in the mental interpretation of identity. It can only live in the experience of I am that and where I am that is, to whatever degree you experience that. Sorry. I still have leftover raspiness. And hold on, let's see what it's going to do. So now the process of moving into the next greater whole is upon us. So that's sort of segment one of this monologue, this transmission that I'm in with you. So I have been trying to remember a word that I was given when I was studying the human DNA, when I had the opportunity to work with geneticists and also the man who had done a tremendous amount of work that's really was the first person that made sure that this work called the creation exercises, which was called Origin back then, was because it's all about bringing you back. The creation exercises are all about bringing you back to a point of origin, your point of origin, where yourself lives. So, and you all that do the creation exercise know that because when you do them, there's this experience after the embodies of wow, I don't remember. I don't know where to put this. I don't know what this experience is. It just feels like a landing place, like a location that is larger than what I've held myself or identified myself inside of. So in our DNA, like in our genetics, is that right? In our biology, as a species, we for a long time carried something called an appendix. And that appendix, as we evolved as humanoids, we still carried that appendix. But it became not only not useful, it became detrimental if it ever got infected. Well, we carry something in our DNA that is approaching being detrimental or is now detrimental. It's called the double helix. And it fires in the DNA in the face of expectation. So if you come towards me like this, I'm going to have an expectation. If you come towards me like, I'm going to have an expectation. And it fires that double helix. And so in my lifetime with a bunch of people, some of whom may still be working with me. I don't remember when we went through certain things. We worked really hard when we could feel that double helix of expectation rise to simply let it not fire. Pretty much like in our biology, we don't eat bark anymore. So um, um, that that thing that we appendix doesn't isn't used anymore. So that DNA double helix ties in is archaic. It is a primitive system that allows us to operate without consciousness, to operate without our own personal protocol, our own personal standards for our existence. It's very primitive. It's alive upon the land. You know, I don't know if you drift through, if news drifts through your iPhone or your computer, but there's a huge battle over masks. That's the double helix, and expectation of being conned, and expectation of being harmed, and expectation of being right. And it isn't the positioning, it's the firing of this double helix, which then fires our emotional system, and we go into fight or flight, screw it or kill it. Okay, so that's the genetics. That's in our DNA. That is what um, the scientists I work with, when I was in a study, they were in a study of people that tranced out or psychic or meditated deeply. They examined our DNA and to sort of discover a baseline for what human beings were capable of. And so they, at a genetic level, at a DNA level, there is still a primitive uh, wiring. That's this double helix that, and you know what it is. I mean, you expect to get a check in the mail so you can pay your rent, and your owner of your house that you're renting is standing at your door. It's real, and the check didn't come. It's pretty hard to not feel that double helix fire. It's really hard. It's also the basis of human beings assigning properties to other human beings. He was judging me. He didn't give me any room to breathe. And I'm not talking about George Floyd. He didn't get any room to breathe. That was evidential. But I'm talking about, we assign, this double helix works with our mental system to assign perceptions to others without ever checking if that's a true perception. We've had a couple of people that work in stores knifed and shot, bystanders shot because the person didn't have on a mask. That double helix fired. They considered who wanted to put them to wear a mask, which is actually pretty benign, and they killed them or harmed them. So the expectation, the trigger of the double helix is upon the land. Um, in our in our nervous system, it wires into the need for the parasympathetic. The parasympathetic nervous system is what happens when you're in a resting state, or you're meditating, or you're calm, or you've developed protocols that don't have the double helix fire. And I'll bring one of those protocols I have up in a moment. But and then we have the sympathetic nervous system, which when the double helix fires, the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, screw it or kill it. It's fires, protection, protect, defend. Okay, can we just all breathe? Because this is a transmission. And I've been noticing lately, I've been going into deep states of trance, deep, deep, deep absorption levels of consciousness. and that I knew when I came into this Facebook Live that that absorption level of consciousness I was in, it just means how much you can absorb something so that you can transmit it back out through the ethers, through the energy field that we share. And I really need this conversation to go below the brain, below the mental mind. I really need the self to hear me, yourself. Because that self lives in your consciousness, and how you become conscious is through your own protocols, because the identity you have is based on survival, it's based on the outer world, is where you get your cues. It's based on that, your level of acceptance, your level of belonging, your level of participation is all based on the world around you. It's not based on who you are. And my beautiful, beautiful, beloved people, that is now an archaic matrix, broken away from the original nature, the original design of human being. And we are, whether we like it or not, in all our prayers, all our cravings, all our longings, all our pain has all been the longing for who we are without that double helix, without that double helix triggering. Without that double helix triggering, you have compassion, you have love, you have acceptance without um, capitulation. So you can say to someone, and it's really clear with the masks, because it's such an amazing template of exploration, this phenomenon with the masks. It completely embodies everything that humanity is going through right now. We look for truths about the masks. We don't look to see our protocol, what we whole life to be, what is an expression of our self. We have an expectation of others that they should operate like we do, that they are wrong, and we're right. But the point I want to make is it's because we're at a border. We're at a border where who we've been as human beings is the primitive aspect. And I hate to say primitive because I actually think the primitive part of ourself is beautiful. But, sorry, hit the table. But but we're evolving past that. So when a species, our consciousness, which is part eternal, part temporal, part divine, part primordial, in this evolutionary process we're in, we reach these borderlines where we experience things with great intensity, great fierceness, because it's a system issue, it's not a personality issue. So there was a time, a very, very, very long time ago, I think it was when Origin started, which is when I lived in my sanctuary in Ohio, our sanctuary in Ohio, and we bought that in 1997. So you can see it was a long time ago. But we actually worked really hard to not have that double helix fire, to get past it, because it just becomes like a appendix. You just stop wanting to eat bark. Honest. So the the part I want to speak to now is how it shows up in the human system. But before I do that, I want to talk about this border. So what happens is, imagine there's this border with a 10-mile electrical fence and a barbed wire at the beginning and end of this energetic electrocution that you have to go through to get through the barbed wire and the electrical current and out the barbed wire on the other side. What do you think that might look like systemically? I think I've told this story before, but we had a dog named Prometheus. We shifted it to Permy because by the time he said his whole name, he was long gone. But he would sit patiently. We had a 3-foot electrical fence. He would he would gear himself up, and he would run through the fence, the electrical fence current, and he would look like what you see in comedies of, hair standing out on end and shaking, and but he'd go to the other side, and then he'd sit patiently for us to turn off the fence so that he could come back. We actually got the fence up to 10 feet, 5 on either side of the electrical current, so that he didn't go through. So that's really honestly where we are at a nervous system, genetic, biological level. And I'm really clear about this because the one factor that that I got trained by, and I'm appreciative, when I was not well, was how still I had to be, how I couldn't be nervous, how I mustn't trigger expectation. Just follow the protocol, take the pills, stay rested, drink the colloidal silver. Just this not letting that double helix fire went on for a good 5 days for me. And it allowed me to let my system be in a deep enough resting state. And that's the gift of not following the lead of the double helix, is the body gets to be in a sufficient resting state that as a mystic, that you actually can meet paradise in your own system. It's in that resting state. So let's say metaphorically, what is the sociological condition at this border where the double helix fires, where there's this electrical current that moves through the body that makes you want to react rather than be calm, where you're prickly with the barbed wire fence of attack, defend, run, fight. What is that? Everybody breathe. Thank you. So let's use myth. But it is sociologically accurate that at this border that we're at this border, some aspect of ourself has gone past that border. Sorry, the self of you has gone past that border. And it's like in a stress point. You could say, if we gave it characteristics, hoping the personality will follow. So in this 7-month work that I am doing with human beings, we don't talk about the self. We don't try to identify it. We corral our personality systems. So it's done kind of obliquely, sideways, peripherally. It's not done focused. And we move ourselves in this peripheral state of conversation and exploration of 7 levels of consciousness, of money, and of time. But without realizing the moving around in these territories of our existence, it actually begins to let the self rise and builds the strength, stamina, capacity of the self to be able to have, and this is the queerest part, to begin to develop an avatar of personality versus a developed personality that was the survival personality to get you through the last years of your life and get to this border, but now you're going to need to shed your skin. You need to shed your skin like the man in Avatar. And this was why self-study becomes so significant, because by studying what you would like the self of you to be, what you crave, what you long for, you are in self-discovery, and you are becoming self-aware. So the first question you want to ask yourself is, do I want to be at the effect in this conversation we're having, not generally. There's lots of other things you can start with. But in this conversation, do you want to diminish the effect on the double helix in your DNA? Do you want to make it useless, like the cavemen that stopped eating bark, thinking bark was the only way they could survive? So how do we know we're at that electrical current, in that electrical shock wave? We're feeling it all the time nowadays. We feel it in our empathic response, our connection to the living field of human being across the world. And we're watching it play out. But I truly believe that the God that visited me in whenever he did, 1994, that when he said, have them not be afraid, this isn't their story. This story needs to be finished, and it isn't theirs. I truly believe that it is also maybe not ours to be in fight or flight or screw it or kill it. And that maybe while we can feel the electrical current in our body, that we can develop our consciousness to be strong enough to stay calm in the face of it and to dismantle the helix. And that in dismantling the helix, which rises with expectation, the expectation of harm, the expectation of hope, the expectation of a solution, the expectation of truth, etc., and so on. We can shift it to anticipation without expectation. That goes into another dialogue. Jackie's going to organize a group gathering once a month. And why I wanted to have this conversation with you today, so you can ponder on it and self-study it, reflect it with yourself, put it on your life and see what examples you can find that support this conversation. And then we can gather together as a group at the end of the month and we can discuss it. You know, self-study isn't about finding the truth, because it's pretty evident there's no truth right now, or there's so many truths. There's no ultimate truth, because truth is forming in an evolutionary manner into its next greater whole. One of the truths that I am aware of consciously myself and I promote is the possibility of truth as paradise, where the double helix can fire and we can anticipate without feeling thwarted, feeling let down, feeling hurt. And it's so hard for people, I've noticed around me, and because that's the people I've been dealing with, it's so hard to get past it because the personality framework has its existence there. It exists to be hurt because that's the common norm. It exists to be offended because that's the common norm. That's the expectation. It exists to be disappointed. Years and years ago, when I was when I was getting channeled the creation exercises, I realized that this double helix, this personality structure that we find ourselves in, there's been many people trying to dismantle its effect on us. Werner Erhard generated something called creating possibility. I still use that one. I developed protocol, like I have a protocol that even if everything in me tells me I'm being offended or judged, that I don't let that double helix fire, that I just let it pass like I hit the electrical current. And if I just step back out, if I just can step back out of it, my system will calm back down and I can handle things in a sensible manner, not in a reactive manner. The problem right now is if we continue to handle things, if the system, sorry, I don't mean you yourself. This is not about your personality. This is about your system. The problem for humanity is that if it continues to handle things in a reactive manner, it will simply, a large portion of humanity will probably die off. Which then confronts us with, do we want to live? Or do we just want to be part of the slough off? Really big choices right now, don't we have? It's amazing. So let's go into the mystical or metaphysical part of this conversation. So I deal in territories. In those territories, certain realities exist. And I deal in time quadrants, and that means that they exist because you put them into time, because they exist in time. If you stop believing in them, or you stop thinking that that's your protocol and that's what your life is about, they simply stop existing in time. But you could say at a mythological level that at this border that we're now at, which is now becoming more, the current's becoming more at that border, and the of it, that what is at that border, not beyond it, but at that border, it doesn't carry forward beyond it, is betrayal, abandonment, and rejection. Those are expectations. I expect you to love me, and when you don't, I feel rejected. I expect you to think I'm great stuff, and when you don't treat me that way, I feel betrayed. I thought you loved me and thought it was completely impossible for me to make a mistake. That's the expectation of love, or to need to grow, or that you might have differences with me. Abandonment. It's when we leave each other. Abandonment shows up often at this border because the system doesn't know life beyond abandonment, beyond rejection, beyond betrayal. In Werner Erhard's work, he said that betrayal was the greatest level of becoming awake, becoming transformed, because once betrayal didn't matter anymore, you simply started existing beyond it. Once rejection doesn't matter anymore, you simply start existing beyond it. Once abandonment doesn't matter anymore, you begin to exist beyond it. Doesn't mean that for a while your system doesn't keep firing those notions, firing those registers, but you do begin to exist beyond them. So in betrayal, we often feel judged. We feel attacked. We feel betrayed. And that's why the masks are so fascinating. You'll never read anything about the mask now without thinking about this conversation, because it is about abandoning the party line. If you don't wear the mask, or if you do wear the mask, you're abandoning the party line. If you're betraying people, because I could catch a virus with you out not wearing a mask. This is all dialogue. This isn't me saying it. I could catch the virus if you don't wear a mask. How could you betray me like that? And then when somebody is asked to leave the store or the eatery because they are not wearing a mask, they feel rejected and they go for the kill. They go for the fight or flight. Screw it or kill it. Screw you. Breathe. So it is an archaic system. It is our appendix. We can stop eating the bark. We can stop identifying the firing of the system as an established truth, what it fires up. So I've been in the professional field of what I do since I was 19 years old. I had an extraordinary support system in Brian Christopher, who I think still does readings, Bryan. And he trained me ruthlessly. I'm only one of two people he ever trained, and the other one went crazy. Do you know what he trained me in? He trained me in not being personally offended. Now, do I feel personally offended at times? Yeah, absolutely. I'm even probably afraid of human beings at a personality level because they just don't know themselves. Therefore, if you don't know yourself, you're dangerous. You're dangerous because you can be swayed, you can be enrolled, you can be manipulated, bamboozled. But even all the caterwauling that's going on is the evolutionary need to no longer be bamboozled or fooled, but it's just, if you hear the hue and cry, it's all that electrical current going through people at the border, like Hades, screaming and yelling and hollering. But once you step out of it, once you don't believe yourself, once you don't believe you're being betrayed, you just refuse it, even though your whole system is trying to enroll you, but you don't believe you're abandoned. By what? Then your system begins to not track, like in the craving exercises, craving what, um, well, we're going to be teaching it next month, but there's a creation exercise that goes craving what loss for me is. And you actually rematrix the world so it doesn't fire the double helix. So craving what loss is for me is the opportunity to care deeply. Creating what loss is for me is the opportunity, no, creates what loss is for me is tenderness, compassion, and caring. So you can actually hear it when I say it, don't you? Because the minute I say the word loss, your double helix fires. But when I say what it is for me is tender caring, you can feel it struggling to fire, but something is taking the energy, the current out of it, right? And rematrixing that current into something that operates on behalf of life and has us exist as whole. So we're at the border where the scream, the Hades scream, will be a betrayal, abandonment, rejection, judgment, enemy. Being judgmental or judging. And we've talked about these a long time But we've talked about them as human characteristics. They're not human characteristics. They're stimulus response, no choice Pavlov dog. There's how the society wired in those stimulations. So Brian was phenomenal with me. He never acknowledged me. He never gave me credit for anything. He trained getting credit for anything out of me, another expectation. I can't move forward um, if you don't praise me, if you don't realize what I'm doing. And sometimes I've had to take a stand on that because if people didn't realize what I was up to and who I was in the matter, I couldn't move forward with them. But that wasn't like they should or oughta. It's more that there was no common place to dwell on behalf of what I was engaged in and they were engaged in because we just didn't know the operating state that I was in or they were in. If we didn't know that common operating state, we just couldn't, nothing of real value could happen because we're just pieces on a monopoly board being moved around by a reactionary, archaic system of, of primitive survival memory. So that's one of the things. He dismantled the expectation of credit, and so my double helix stopped firing there. And then he refused to let me be personally offended by anything that happened. That I had to wait till the storm of the offendedness passed, the double helix firing, and then it was to see what there was to discuss, what there was to pay attention to, what there was to unpack, I call it now. So I don't really know what you're going to do with this conversation. I'm not sure at the personality level we can do anything about it. I do think that the information, however, gives you choice. It gives you the possibility of consideration. I was thinking about Daniel in the lion's den, about what's on the other side of the electrical current of the double helix and the betrayal, abandonment, rejection, uh, protect and defend, for or against realm of a reality of separation we're born into. And I've always had Daniel in the lion's den as one of my imageries that allows me to stay calm in the midst of attack, in case it's an attack. And you can't be in a position I'm in without having people attack you because they are triggered by something that they no longer can believe can be true, and they don't dare hope. That's why hope can be beautiful or deadly, because hope can fire that double helix, but if you can transmute it into an anticipation of possibility, it goes one way. If it triggers into an expectation and disappointment or um, thwarted expectation, it goes into that fight or flight, screw it or kill it. Um, Betrayed, abandoned, rejected, uh, electrical current at that electrical fence at the borderline. So I trained myself out of reacting to being personally offended because, frankly, everybody has their opinion. And why would I be offended by a person's opinion? It didn't make, after a while, it didn't make sense to me. But I went back recently to the image, the Bible image. I have to try and find it, of Daniel standing in the lion's den with his hands on the heads of two lions, two hands on the heads of two lions. And I realized that my own consciousness had kind of gone past the border about it, because up until then I realized there was a relationship between the lions and Daniel where it wasn't part of the consideration. Abandonment, rejection, betrayal, harm, fight or flight, protect and defend just wasn't part of the algorithm. But recently I had this experience of that same childhood Bible image of how weird it really was Daniel was so excited that he got to pet the head of a lion, just like I was so excited to have the baby bears treat me like their mother. Um, that there was actually excitement and a tenderness and a different kind of world when the lions and Daniel were one with each other, when they weren't even considering what everybody else thought was supposed to happen. Just a teaser. So I'm going to go read for a minute what people have written in case there's anything that no. So that's really all I have today. Since Beryl's on the phone, I just got your gift, and I posted them on Unity of Care, so I have to show you this part of what she gave me. Isn't that cute? And the other one, thank you, Beryl. Nothing like being acknowledged on. God courts us with GOD, the generating, organizing, and operating design of creation courts us with the beauty of this world. My shoes I adore, and my little play envelope is precious. All right, thank you for today. I would like you to consider what I've said. I would like, if you'd like to come to a group, for us to look at it objectively. Because it would be nice if there was a body of humanity that could evolve past the trigger of the double helix, to be able not only to diminish the effect of thwarted expectation, but also to be able to live in anticipation with no need for it to have a result. Isn't that amazing, the thought of living in anticipation with no need for the result? And why is that? I think I'm getting into conversation that exists past the border, so I should probably, but I'll finish with that. Because when you live in anticipation, you live in the genuine article of hope. It's not hoping for peace because there's war. There's hoping for peace because you anticipate it. It isn't like hoping for love because you fear hate. It's because you hope for love because you're anticipating it. That was the strongest activity of consciousness I ever went through. That was when those of you that know me now, that's that humor that you see, and that's that way you see me interact about things, is I live in the anticipation of paradise. And it's really for those of you that do the templates, it's really template 3 and 4, with no need for evidence. With no need for evidence. That's past the border. That's past the border of betrayal, abandonment, rejection, past the border of thinking you're being judged, or thinking you're being harmed, or thinking you're being criticized, or thinking you're not known. Just lives past the border is the anticipation of what we hold in ourselves that we know is true. And the only thing is, we haven't seen its evidence yet. But if we don't hold those anticipations, if they don't live in our template and our GOD and our generating, organizing design of creation, our generating, operating design of creation, that if we don't live in those anticipations, someday soon, someday maybe, but it lives already here with me. Must be approaching 8 o'clock. Yeah. But you see, paradise already lives here with me. It doesn't require evidence. And do I feel betrayed and abandoned? Do those feelings come up? Yeah. I just let them pass through my territory. They have no home in paradise. That's why Daniel could stand with his hands on the lion, so happy to feel their fur, and the lion's so happy to be with him, like the bear's with me, and whatever's happy to be with you. When you look out and the sun is shining bright, and you say, oh my God, look how bright the sun is shining. It's shining brightly for you. You're the one there. Last night I had the back doors of my RV open because I wanted to see if I could see the Big Dipper with all the 7 planets. And I could. It was right up in the sky, right outside my door. For me. And how did I know it was there for me? Because I was the one looking at it. It was for me. So for Daniel in that lion's den, those lions were there for him. And he was there for them. What it would be like if we were just there for each other on behalf of whatever was rising. And it's going to get fun in the 7-month work we're doing. It's going to get interesting because we will be and already are at that border. And then we'll just keep doing the work. We'll just keep meeting and self-studying. And without us realizing it, we'll just find ourselves on the other side. How about you? Many blessings. See you next Friday. Namaste.